I'm making another video on the steering system just because there's a huge demand for diagnosing some steering trouble that everybody's having on either their Ford Superduty and for that matter, this axle is actually a Dana front axle. I believe it's the same one on some of the Dodge trucks. So I'll go through this one more time and try to do a better job as compared to my first one. So what are the sources of variation or problem that you're going to have with your steering system? Well, the very first one is that, goes without saying, is that you have some front end alignment issues. And of course, I'm assuming that the front end is aligned and there are no steering issues. It's got all the proper caster and since it's really a solid axle, there's not a whole lot you can do to adjust that. It's got the right toe in, toe out. And it also, if you shouldn't be seeing any unusual signs of wear on your tires. So if that box is checked, let's go to the second thing here. Now the second thing is that you're going to possibly have some play or backlash in some of your steering joints. So almost every one of these steering joints can contribute to that backlash or play. So starting off with here, the joint up by the steering fitment arm, I had some trouble in that one, so I replaced it, and it still didn't fix my problem. But of course, you've got a number of ones here. You've got the tie rod in on that side, but it's really a huge drag link because it goes all the way up from the steering gear here down to the end there. So you've got possibly a issue with your whole drag link assembly and the ball joint that hooks on up to the tie rod end for your spindle, as well as the tie rod end on the other side. So check those, make sure that there's no play in there whatsoever, and if you check that box, you're good to go. It helps to have a buddy, at the steering wheel and turn it back and forth, checking, all these different joints. And really, it doesn't take a whole lot of play to cause some, I guess you can say, some play in your steering wheel just because of the bad joints there. So we're going to assume that, well, I won't assume anything, but go through and check and make sure that every one of those joints is good. And like I say, mine was right here. Was that one was bad, and I replaced it. And I replaced it with moved parts. And by the way, if don't cheap out on this stuff. You went on through, you're going to go through and do all this stuff right. Do it right the first time. Don't buy the cheap knockoff parts. Make sure everything you buy has got a Zerk fitting on it, so you can grease it and it'll last a long time. Okay, so the next one. Now the next one is the ball joint friction. So you may question, what does the ball joint friction have to do with the steering system? Well, a lot of the Fords, the actual upper and lower ball joints do not come with a Zerk fitting. So those ball joints become dry. And as a result, there's just too much friction at the joint. And if there's too much friction in the joint, you can imagine your truck weighs somewhere right around 8,000 pounds. And the weight distribution typically is somewhat 70% of the front, 30% of the rear. So let's just say that there's 5,000 pounds in the front, and each one of the spindles is supporting something on the order of 2,500 pounds. So if you have a steel-on-steel dry ball joint, it's just going to take a lot of effort to turn the wheel. And that additional friction is just going to exacerbate all your different the backlash in your entire steering system. So I've even noticed before I did all this work that I went on through and I would turn a corner, and when I was turning a corner, I'd actually hear something like a hammer, sledgehammer that is, on the steering system, and what it's doing is that there's a steel on steel, and it would just break, and actually turn the wheel. So definitely I had a dry ball joint problem, and you need to go through and check to see if your ball joints have too much friction. And there's actually a service bulletin that goes over the amount of friction, and I found one that's on at like a 99 to 2001 Ford 4x4, and it talks about the steering is wandering, going back and forth. Well, and it gives you some sort of a spec here on how much friction it takes to actually turn the spindle. And I'll show you here on my setup on how I'm going to do that. I can say that I've already got the nut off here on the spindle, and what I have is, if I can turn the camera here, I've got two 16 gauge pieces of steel, and in between them I have it very well lubricated. So this is a great surface to put the weight of the truck on, with the tire that is. Put the tire on, put the weight of the truck on here, and actually manually turn the wheel and see how much friction it takes to find out how much friction is actually in the ball joints to turn the wheel. And that'll give you a good idea as far as if there's a problem right there. But getting back here to the system here, and keep in mind too, some other symptoms of the dry ball joints is that if you turn the wheel to the left, it stays turned to the left. It doesn't come back to the center, and then you have to turn the wheel to the right and to bring it back to the center. And so if you think about it, you're going down the road, you adjust the wheel to the left, and it turns to the left, and it's deviating to the left, and now you got to actually take and physically turn the wheel to the right to correct it to the right. So you're constantly going back and forth as you drive down the road. Again, that's another indication that possibly you've got very dry ball joints, and those things need to be replaced. So I'll go through a procedure here on how to do it to give you a little bit better idea on how to check this thing, and it's pretty straightforward.